Samson was God's chosen man, defeated entire armies alone. But not in the end. Place in the hands of a simple, beautiful, and seductive woman while sleeping in your lap. Cut your braids. That was the secret of his strength, and delivered Samson to mortal enemies. But what really led Delilah to betray him? It was greed, fear, or something even darker. This is the story of Israel's greatest hero, that in a moment of weakness, lost everything. And it all started in a time of darkness for Israel, when the weight of Philistine oppression seemed unbearable. The Philistines were a ruthless enemy. Your troops invaded villages, looted crops, and spread terror. In the midst of this chaos, a man emerged who seemed invincible. Samson, he was more than one warrior, more than one common man. Samson was one living legend, feared by the Philistines and revered by the Israelites. Since before birth, Samson was already part of a much larger plan. Your story began in a moment of deep sadness for his family. Manoah, his father and wife, a woman with no name mentioned, lived with the weight of sterility. They had no children, and at that time, this was seen almost as a curse. The fervent prayers of Manoah asking for an heir seemed to have no answer. Until on an ordinary day, the extraordinary happened, and woman was in the field, maybe taking care of your daily tasks, when one man of unusual intelligence appeared before her. Your eyes had one mirror, strange, and his voice carried an authority that made the earth seem firmer on its feet. You are barren and never had children, he said, but you will stay awake and give birth to a son. He will be Nazarite to God from until the day of his death, because this boy will be the liberator of Israel from the hands of the Philistines. That message wasn't just good news, was a call. And thus Samson was born, carrying within itself the weight of a promise. Since he was little, he knew he was different. Other children could run free, but he had rules. Others could cut their hair, but his grew like one constant reminder that your life was not yours. He wasn't just one boy, was one chosen, but with that choice we had a burden. The responsibility to carry on the shoulders, not just your own life, but the fate of all the people of Israel. God had him as a liberator, a man destined to face the Philistines, the brutal oppressors who had taken Israel. Nazire's vote was not just a rule, but one symbol of your direct connection to God. Your hair that should never be cut, it was one visible sign of his scar. Every thread that grew was one reminder that your life wasn't yours, but from God, and as long as he remained faithful, Samson would be invincible. But break this madness would mean more than losing strength, would mean losing connection with the purpose for which he had been called. Crescendo, Samson quickly stood out. He was huge, with arms that looked like tree trunks, and eyes. But what made him special wasn't just his physique, was the force that came from God, a force he used to protect Israel and face the Philistines. There was a day when Samson, alone, faced the impossible. 1,000 Philistines armed to the teeth, surrounded in the open field. The ground shook over the weight of his boots, and the glare of the blades reflected the scorching sun. They laughed, confident that their numerical superiority would be enough to crush any man who dared challenge them so many times. But Samson didn't back down. Your eyes, burning with fierce determination, the field. Around you, there were no weapons, only what appeared to be an ass jaw. Drop on the dry floor. He attached, feeling the weight of the rustic piece on your hands, and then, without fear, advanced against the entire army. The first blow was devastating, crushing a soldier's helmet and pushing on the ground, like an empty bag, before others could react. Samson had already turned his jaw, sharing 2 more. Chaos has taken over the field. The cries of the wounded echoed, while the Philistines realized that they were not before an ordinary man. The jaw cracked against the knees and cracked bones. With the strength of Samson didn't stop. His movements were fast, brutal, as a storm that no one could stop. Every blow was necessary, as if God himself guided his hand. The Philistines who had come with arrogance, I started to shy away in a panic, but there was nowhere to run. The field that was once a war stage became a cemetery. When it's all over, Samson was standing, of course, with the blood of your enemies staining the ground around you. 1,000 men lay on the ground, and the jaw, now broken, still hung from his hand. The news of this victory ran like fire through the territories. The Israelites hailed him like a savior, a symbol of divine strength who still dwelt among them. But for the Philistines, Samson wasn't just one man. He was one curse. They planned one attack to end your life once and for all. In the dead of night, an Israelite village was surrounded by Philistine soldiers. They knew Samson was there, resting in one of the houses, with torches in hands and swords ready to attack. The soldiers moved in silence. "This time, he will not escape," whispered the squad leader. The leader raised his hand, giving the signal to shoot. The soldiers approached, ready to invade the house. The door squeaked when one of them knocked her down, and then the door opened with violence. No threshold. Samson appeared, his imposing figure cut out against the light of the torches. For a moment, the soldiers froze, unable to believe what they saw. The captain was broken by a war cry. But it wasn't from the Philistines. Era of Samson and what happened next would become a legend among the Israelites and a nightmare among the Philistines. But will it be that even the strength of Samson could overcome such an ambush? The soldiers stole, swords erected, and the determination to put an end to the terror that Samson had become. But Samson didn't hesitate. With a fast movement, he the first soldier who dared to enter, and the shield against others, as if he weighed no more than a child. The impact momentarily paved the way, but the Philistines did not retreat, surrounded the house on all sides, pressing like a fierce wave, who tried to swallow his target. Samson saw that he was surrounded. He knew that the strength of his enemies, it wasn't just in numbers, but in the hatred they had for him. And for a brief moment, even him, the man chosen by God, felt fear. So he found his gun in the corner of the house. A wooden beam was lying on the ground. With a single movement, he lifted it up like a toy and walked forward. The beam crushed the shields and the spears that the Philistines tried to use to protect themselves. Every blow made the ground vibrate, and the soldiers' screams echoed. In the night, the Philistines, back to back. For the first time, the terror stamped on their faces was greater than the courage they had brought with them. They realized that they weren't just facing a man, were facing something none of them could understand. Completely, when the battle ended, the ground was covered with fallen soldiers. Some moaned in pain. Others were completely. Samson, sweating and panting, looked around, holding the beam like a holy sword. The dust settled, and he was there, lonely, in the field. It was always like this. Victory brought tears, and silence brought. The Israelites could hail him as a hero, but no one really understood the burden that he carried. He was feared by his enemies, revered by his people, but who could possibly meet him? Who could see the man behind the force? And it was in this that Delilah entered his life. Or maybe we should say, it was in this that Samson let her in. One mistake he would deeply regret. Delilah was unlike anything Samson had ever known. It wasn't just your beauty, although she was so beautiful that it looked like the sun itself shone only to light her up. There was something else in her. A mystery in the eyes, a magnetism that made even Samson, the man who faced armies without hesitation, feel vulnerable. But who was Delilah after all? The display does not reveal many details about their origin or their motivations. Would she be just one woman moved by greed? Lured by the silver promises of Philistine leaders, or would have been pressed, fearing that if I didn't cooperate, would suffer the consequences? Maybe Delilah saw Samson not one man, but a means to achieve power and security. Whatever the truth, one thing is for sure. She was cunning and knew how to explore Samson's emotional weaknesses as no other enemy had ever done. For Samson, Delilah seemed to be the only person who did not see in him only a warrior or a weapon. She treated him like a man. With your pains and weaknesses, he found comfort in his arms. But I didn't know that comfort was a carefully set trap. At the beginning, Delilah asked nothing about Samson's strength. She waited for the right moment, building trust, approaching, and when she realized that he was completely in love, began its onslaught. Samson, you are so strong. But what if one day you weren't? If one day your strength fails, there is something that makes you weak. It was a simple question, almost innocent, but Samson felt something strange. He laughed, diverting the conversation. If I were tied with 7 strings of fresh bow, I would be as weak as any other man. That night, while he slept, Delilah puts information into practice. She tied him with fresh bowstrings, and then the Philistines. But when Samson woke up, he broke them like strands of hair. The Philistines fled, and Delilah, with a fake smile, pretended not to understand what had happened. Because you tricked me, Samson. If you love me, tell me the truth. Samson, in turn, I had no idea that every lie was walking straight into the trap. Because in that silent house, there wasn't just a confidence game. There was a much bigger plan going on. What would happen in the next few nights would put not only his life at risk, but the future of an entire nation. Delilah tried again, more and more often. Another night he said, if I am tied with new strings that have never been used, my strength will go away. Once again, she waited for him to fall asleep and tied him up. One more time, she called the Philistines who lurked in the shadows. But Samson broke free easily. The ropes broke like fragile threads, and the Philistines fled in a panic. How many times we let ourselves be deceived, believing that we are in control of everything. Just like Samson, we ignore the warning signs, and we keep trusting the wrong people in the wrong things until it's too late. Delilah did not need Samson's strength to defeat him. She used something much subtler: insistence, manipulation, and the appeal to the heart. And so many traps form, not with direct attacks, but with whispers that make us let our guard down. Delilah was frustrated. She knew she couldn't fail. But Samson was a smart man. Or maybe it was his love that made him suspicious. He didn't want to tell his secret, but Delilah's insistence began to wear him down. At the bottom, she knew it wasn't just physical strength that needed to be broken, it was his spirit. And Delilah played her final card. She cried, accusing her of not really loving her. Every tear, every word was calculated to reach Samson, where it hurt the most. In the heart, if you love me, because you don't trust me. Why don't you tell me what really makes you strong? Or do you not feel for me how I feel about you?" It was an emotional attack, something that not even the strength of Samson could resist for a long time. And then, on a fateful night, he finally gave in. "My strength does not come from me, she comes from God. My hair was never cut, because it is the sign of my vote with him. If my hair is cut, my strength will disappear, and I will be like any other man." Delilah heard those words carefully. She showed no reaction, just smiled and waited for him to sleep. When you were sure that Samson was completely surrendered to sleep, put a man to cut his braids. One by one, Samson's strength is gone. He felt nothing at the time, but when you wake up, realized something was wrong. The Philistines were there, ready to capture the... He tried to react, but your body did not obey. He who had already defeated 1,000 men alone. Now it was weak, helpless. When the Philistines broke into the house that night, Samson was no longer the invincible man they feared. He tried to get up, tried to fight, but his legs weakened. The iron chains they brought were not necessary. Even without them, Samson couldn't get away. The hero of Israel, the man whose strength was a symbol of divine protection. Now he was lying on the ground, helpless. Delilah got what she wanted. More badly knew she who your betrayal had planted the seed of divine vengeance. The moment Samson fell, something inside him woke up. And what did he do next? Even blind and weak, may have been the greatest act of strength and faith that ever existed. Prepare for the most epic ending than you ever imagined. Delilah watched from afar, hidden in the shadows. Your face was serious, almost expressionless, but there was something in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe relief, maybe just the weight of knowing that your role in the story was completed. Why did she do it? It was just for the money, maybe. But the truth is that nobody knows for sure what was going on in her heart. Delilah was a complex woman. She lived in a no-man's land, not worth Sorek, a region between Israel and the Philistine territories. Maybe she felt pressured, fearing that the offer of the Philistine leaders would be refused. She herself would be the target of her anger. Or maybe she really chose Samson not for love, but as a means to achieve something greater. Wealth, security power. The Philistines, in your fury, were not content to capture it. They took him to Gaza, the intelligence of your enemies, and there you came to humiliate him. First, gouged out your eyes. A cruel gesture, but symbolic. They wanted Samson never to see the light of day again. Never again saw the land he had set up. Protect, then they put him to work, turning a millstone. Like an animal, day after day, Samson stayed there, placing the heavy stone, being mocked and insulted by his captors. He who had dropped city gates and defeated armies was now reduced to a blind slave, turning a wheel in the dark. But Samson's captivity wasn't just a punishment. It was also a time of reflection, without daylight to guide your steps. Samson began to see in a way that had never been seen before. He realized that his true strength had never been in muscles or hair, but in the presence of God in your life. As your enemies laughed from your fall, something was happening I don't understand. Your hair, symbol of your friendship, started to grow again. And with every thread that grew, Samson felt a cloud of faith. He understood that he had failed, but also realized that God had not yet finished his work on it. While Samson worked the mill blind and humiliated, nobody paid attention into something that seemed insignificant. Your hair, little by little, it was growing again. For the Philistines, it meant nothing. But for Samson, every day of madness in the dark brought one feeling that something was changing. And it was in that silence, away from the screams and applause from men, that God's plan began to move in a way that no one could imagine what had come before. If you are enjoying this story, when subscribing to the channel, you help spread the word of God for more people who need to listen. Every angle, it's one step further to bring divine light to those who seek answers. Click sign up and be part of this mission to transform lives and strengthen the faith. Samson, blind and humiliated, started screaming about his life. He realized that his strength had never really been. He called her God. And for the first time in a long time, he prayed, not one prayer of arrogance or request for victory, but one prayer of repentance. He recognized that he had failed, not just with myself, but with God and his people. Enquanto isso, the Philistines planned a great festival. In the Dagon temple, your God, they wanted to celebrate the capture of Samson. Choose your victory. About the man who had tormented so many. The temple was crowded. With thousands of people gathered, Philistine leaders laughed and toasted. While Samson was brought, guided by a young servant, to the center of the celebration. Bring the hero of Israel, shouted one of the leaders. Let's have fun with him. When Samson was led to the temple, the party was already at its peak. The sound of the drums filled the air. Mixing with the screams and laughter of the crowd, the Philistines danced in triumph, offering gifts to Dagon, your God, for having delivered the hero of Israel into his hands. Bring Samson blind. Someone screamed, and the crowd exploded in laughter. There he called, guided by a young servant, stumbling on the way. But even without your eyes, there was something in him that still scared. One strange glow hovered for one moment, while it was positioned between the two columns. Main temple. Samson felt the cold stones with his fingers, every crack and imperfection. He knew what he needed to do. The humiliation, the blindness, the chains that trapped your body. None of this mattered anymore. Or what did it matter was the purpose for which he had been called. For the first time in a long time, Samson fully remembered who he was. The prayer of Samson, however, it was different every time. When he cried to God, before it was not one request by Vittoria, but one cry of regret. Lord Jehovah, remember me, give me strength, just this one more time. He knew his life was coming to an end, but he also knew that even in his weakness, God could use it for something great. A strange heat ran through Samson's body. It was as if every muscle that was once weak was now filled by one energy that he knew well, but that I thought I had lost forever. He shone deep, firmed his feet to the ground, and keep your hands on the columns, that I die with the Philistines, he screamed, your voice echoing like through the temple. He started to hurt, and the columns screamed. The crowd laughed again, but now it was a nervous laugh. Small cracks began to appear in the stones, and the sound made the laughter disappear. The whole temple began to vibrate. With the last scream, Samson gave everything he had, your body, your soul, your strength. Everything was delivered. At that moment, the columns collapsed, and the roof came down like a sea of stone and dust. The crowd screamed in panic, but there was nowhere to run. The entire temple was destroyed, taking thousands of Philistines with him, including its leaders. But among the rubble, there was a holy shield. The sacrifice of Samson, it wasn't just a military victory. It was an act of redemption, the final delivery of a man he had found. Your purpose, even in your fall, Samson died there, but not like a defeated. He died a hero, fulfilling the call that God had given him. From the beginning, in your weakness, found the true strength. And your sacrifice echoes to this day as a powerful reminder God can use even our lowest moments to do something great. Now, what do you think led Delilah to betray Samson? It was just greed, or there was something deeper? Comment below. Share your opinion, and let's talk about it. But if you found Samson's story shocking, watch this video of the story of Jezebel, such a powerful and manipulative woman who defied even God's own prophets and had the most mysterious death ever recorded in California, and subscribe to the channel.